Hi readers, active and passive, welcome to Dina's Reading Corner, a channel where I review books that I either loved, hated, but definitely found interesting. And in honor of Valentine's Month, I am reviewing The Secret Lives of Baba Segi's Wives. So this was a book club recommendation because two of my friends had read it before, and it was like, okay, fine. They made it sound so interesting. I was like, okay, fine, let me give it a try. So we're meant to read this over the festive season, like December, Jan, like the end of December when people are off work. And even though it was supposed to be read over like a couple of weeks, I found myself reading and finishing this in one day. Like, you know how long it takes to do braids, né? It's like 4 to 6 hours minimum. And so I was like, okay, fine. I'll just read like a few chapters just to see what the book club read is this month. Kanti sana, I am walking into a world of suspense, of thrill. And to say this book was interesting would be to do it a disservice. If I were to describe this book, I would say it's delicious. Like, I am turning every page trying to find what happens next, oh my gosh, what happens, and I managed to figure out the plot twist on page 19, but Baba Segi is giving you don't have shooters. But I was still enthralled, and like the way this was written was just amazing. Like, the author is so skilled, guys. Yes. So this is a book club read, and I managed to read it in one day. And I don't want you to get to the end to feel my thoughts for this. Like, girl, this is a great book. Read this book. And if you don't know plot holes, like, plot twist, sorry. If you don't want me to reveal the plot for you, please read this and then come back to this, because I really, really recommend this. If you want like a chick flick, lazy read, this is the one. Like, get this book, like, run. And it is delicious. I recommend it. So now let's get to the actual plot. So what we have here is a man who is like a Nigerian guy. I think it's set in Nigeria, and he has 4 wives. The 4th wife, he just married, and she happens to be young and happens to be educated, as in like she went to university. The first 3 of his wives were not educated, so now this is bringing some tension in his house because the first 3 wives are kind of jealous of the 4th wife. Cool. So when we open the book, he is going to a traditional doctor because he has this problem. The 4th wife cannot conceive, and obviously it's her problem because he already has 7 kids. So Kengoku is going to this traditional doctor. He's going to look for traditional medicine, because when his first wife also married him, and then a few months went by and it was like, girl, you're still getting your period. That's suspicious. He managed to go to the traditional doctor. The traditional doctor gave him like this bottle of traditional medicine. The first wife drank it, and within a few weeks, the girlie was like, there's a bun in the oven, So he's going back to this guy who he trusted even before he married his wives, So he's known this guy for a long time, and he trusts his advice and counsel. So he's going back there, and it's like, my 4th wife cannot conceive. What should I do? Now, the traditional doctor was happy to help before, but he's like, since this 4th wife is educated, maybe she'd feel more comfortable with Western medicine. So not into zethu of like traditional herbs. No. Take it to a doctor. She's used to like, more westernized medicine. Take it there. And then Baba Segi is like, you know what? You have a point. Okay, fine. So that is the plot bar. There's a man with 4 wives, and the 4th wife cannot conceive. And this is the story of like how we're solving that. Before I go further into the plot, I just want to give a breakdown of the wives, and I kind of even did a timeline of like, okay, fine, Bolanle, which is the 4th wife, and then going to Iya Femi, and then Iya Tope, and then Iya Segi. And Iya means mother, because the nice thing about being a mother in African language is like, we don't know your name, we just know you by Mamaka. So I keep saying Mamaka Segi, and because I'm closer. So Iya Segi is the proper way of saying it in the Nigerian language of this book. But if I say Mama Segi, because Baba Segi is the opposite for me, just forgive me. Sure, I'll give a character breakdown starting from Bolanle. Bolanle is an educated young woman who just graduated from college, and we see when we open the book, but the mother is really not pleased with her marrying this older man who happens to be lower class according to her, because even though Baba Segi has his own businesses and he has money and a house that he can provide for these numerous wives and kids, he is still deemed lower than because he's not educated. So when I visualize Baba Segi, I picture this man who has like a pot belly. He like wearing a wife beater, a white, but it's not white anymore because they're like brown stains of bribe. Yeah, you know, like that vibe. That's what I pictured. So I can imagine the mother's disdain, but I cannot believe I worked hard to educate you, and for you to be marrying a man like this. Babes, I wanted you to marry a banker or a doctor or a lawyer, an engineer. Come on, like when you think of class, you want your kids to class ascend, and now you are going below even us, and we poor. Like, you know, because people who marry, like women who marry into polygamous marriages, I guess they look down in that society. But sure, the mother is not pleased about this. And now as a reader, you ask yourself, hi Bolanle, why are you doing this? You're educated. You can have like any man you want. And the mother is accusing her of like taking the easy way out. Like, bro, you got educated. Are you finding it hard now for you to work for your money instead of like getting this guy to provide for you? Yeah, mom. So now you're also questioning yourself. But background of Bolanle is she was a great student, a great child, and she was the type of kid that parents compared their kids to. Like, she was the standard. Great in school, great in church. The other parents loved her. She was the darling. And even though, so actually it feeds into this, even though her mother was very abusive and had this like high standard of what her daughter should be, she was a pleaser to her mom because she knew ba akafuni sihlale in the situation. She educated her daughter so that they can take her out of poverty. Yeah, close to home, but I'm just saying, it's like that was the reason. And now that you're marrying this man, you taking an easy way out, and you're not going to be able to improve our lives. How are you going to give back to the home? So Bolanle has a younger sister, and the younger sister has been like the mother's nightmare basically. But why can't you be like your sister? Like, she's well behaved, she's disciplined, she's doing well in school, and you're the opposite. Yeah, and that girl is basically rebelling against the mother because the mother is like so harsh and so abusive, basically verbally, physically as well. And she was like, no babes, no. And Bolanle has a father, but even though he's married, they're in the house, and he is a deadbeat. He's like absent-minded. He is not absent-minded, basically a deadbeat. Yeah, he's just an absent father all throughout because he's not defending his daughters when they're getting beaten, and he's turning a blind eye to whatever the mother's doing for the kids. Sure. And it makes sense if he's like checking out because of the mother's abuse, but like putting the kids in harm's way, it's like, we understand. But yeah, so whenever the wife went on a rampage of like making the girls do chores, he just like, okay, fine, I'm going out to see my friends in the tavern, I'll see you guys. Bolanle. She was a good kid even though this was their home environment. Now you're asking yourself, what changed? And this was broken down into multiple chapters where we see things through her point of view. Bolanle was a good school child, and there's this one day when she was walking from school going home, but it was like a rainy day and it was cold. So she's walking through the rain, downpouring, and it's like heavy rains, and then this car stops, and the guy is like, hey, I'm a friend of your mom's, get in, I'll take you to the taxi rank or to her place of work. And she's like, suspicious, but you know what, it's raining heavily, let me get in the car. And instead of taking her where she requested, he goes to his house, and he's like, come in if you want. And she goes in because she is curious about how the rich people live, because she comes from a poor household, like I said before. So she's going through the kitchen like, oh, fridges are zinjena, oh, their couches look like this. And then this guy violently violates her and sexually abuses her. Bolanle, after this experience, is not the her that she was before. She's still a good child, but the life in her is dead. She is dead on the inside. She's a hollow mask of who she was before, and it makes sense. It's like a very violent crime, and she just dies within herself. Now, I'm judging the mother here because you know what your daughter is like, and you're seeing the change, and yet you're not asking if she's okay, And she's also not going to say, hey, this happened to me, because the mother is like heavy in the church. So she wants her daughter to be perfect in terms of academics, as well as like, oh, perfect virgin daughter. So we are talking about, this might be a mark against me, my mom. So that's why she didn't tell her. I understand. But the mother is just so obsessed with this fantasy of making it and having this perfect daughter that she's not even seeing the human in her daughter has died. So that's why I judge her. And that's exactly why she marries Baba Segi, because this is a man who doesn't know her before the ordeal, and instead of asking why she's quiet, why are you within yourself, why, he just sees a perfect wife who's quiet and submissive and young, and the fact that she's educated is going to boost his status amongst his peers, because they're married to uneducated wives like he was, but now that there's a younger educated wife, it's gonna be like an ego boost. So she's like, I'm gonna marry this guy, this is my life sentence, he is not gonna ask me who I am, what my opinions are, he's just going to expect kids out of me, and I can't do that. She's cool. And she's going to this marriage thinking like, I can do some good, I'm gonna help the kids with homework, I'm gonna teach them how to read, I'm going to teach the other wives how to read. But like I said before, they're jealous and they hate her. Cool. That's wife number 4. Let's go to wife number 3, and her name is Iya Femi. Talking about Iya Femi, who is the third wife, Baba Segi. She was born on a farm, and Utata Kenaya was polygamous, like multiple wives and like multiple children. And back in the day, Indian polygamy was done so that you can have free labor basically on the farm. You have all this land, you don't want to hire people and pay them money. Just have multiple kids, they're gonna till the land and for free basically. So now the problem with Ufemi is the fact that Iya Femi is the fact that she is not as good as the other kids in terms of harvesting and doing things fast, and the father is like, girl, why don't you like do things like this? She's like, no, actually I just like doing, it's like, that's a weed, stop admiring the weed, just pull it out of the ground, go on. So the father is like, well, you weak link, because you are not working as hard as the other kids, and yet you're still eating the same as the other kids. And then there was this year when a harvest was not as much as he had expected, so that he can sell to Baba Segi. And so what he did was like, I'm sorry, the crop is not here this year, but let me tell you what we have. There's this child of mine. Instead of this crop, do you want to take her instead? She's a hard worker, she's great, she's like listens fast, no. And I'm thinking the other kids must have been like, that? The weakest link among this is like the hard worker, please. The father was like, I need to get rid of her somehow. And then off she went with Baba Segi. Iya Femi, is actually someone I will affectionately term someone who's in her own world, haters in the clouds. But if you're looking at this realistically, like, she's probably dumb. Like, people in this, like, you are dumb. Like, girl, you're an airhead for real. But I really like that she's in her own world. It's like, you know what, vibes, every day it's vibes with her. And even the fact that the other 2 wives hate Bolanle, she's just like, really though, guys? Yeah, let's have peace. Let's not be this drastic. So I really like her that she's in her own world. Katali Nix. Yeah, so that's how she ended up with the Baba Segi. Thank you. We go to the second wife, who really has a sad story, called Iya Tope. You know what? She is a very fascinating character to me, because she's so competitive, and I can't need like. Okay, fine. Let me explain. Iya Togi. Oh, am I saying that right? No. Iya Tope, second wife. I'm just gonna say second wife. The second wife was born to 2 loving parents who loved their daughter, and by investing in education, so she went to school and she was really loved. And the parents were like kind of successful, but they had money. Now they died suddenly one day, and the uncle, second wife, came and was like, okay, fine, you need to go get off the homestead, because now it's mine. This was my brother's house when it's time for you to go. And zange bamthanda anyway, yena ne girlfriend yakhe, and that girlfriend must have thought about, you think you're better than us because you can read, things like that. So the uncle is like, okay, fine, pack your suitcases, you're gonna go to the township and you're going to like stay in this house, and that lady is going to ensure that you get an education. That lady she went to did not ensure that you get an education. In fact, she made sure that she was a servant and like almost a slave. So she got there first night in jail. I'm like, hey, your dress is babe, so you're not gonna wear that here. You're gonna dress like this because who do you think you are? And you're gonna sleep here. You're not gonna touch these pots. You're not gonna touch these bowls. You're not gonna drink this water. No, because you need to know your place. So that's how she was treated, and she was worked to the bone. Like, working hard and working to the bone is not an issue. I mean, with other people, don't come like, hey, I have a bed and I have food at night, I'm happy, ne? But the verbal abuse that came along with that was so unnecessary. Like, she used to put it down for no reason. But you can never be good enough for my sons. You can never be good enough to drink from our glasses. Like, why would you treat someone like that? And she's an orphan, yeah, bro? Like, that girl did not even have a chance to grieve her parents, bruh. It was so sad. So anyway, Iya Tope then, she starts sleeping with the firstborn son of that house. It's a great love affair, cute stuff. But then one day she comes across the driver and she's like, you need to get me out of here. It driver ka Baba Segi, ne? And she's like, you need to get me out of here. And the guy is like, you know what, I'm gonna talk to my boss. He's a great guy and I think he's gonna take you. And the driver arranges Baba Segi to marry this girl, yeah, boy? And it happens like that. Whoever's goes on Blanda, they got married. Cool, ne? Great stuff. Then we go to the first wife, Mama Segi, Iya Segi, yeah, boy? She has a very fascinating story to me because I did not expect to see her in that light at all. You need to understand that for maybe the first 2/3 of the book, we're seeing things from a point of view, Baba Segi plus Bolanle. So when we see how the wives are mistreating her, we start hating the wives, and even when we get to their chapters going, the wives are saying things from their point of views and we're seeing their histories. You are initially thinking to yourself, I'm not going to empathize with them. Like, you guys are villains, I already hate you. But what the author does is like manage for you to feel sorry for them, empathize with them, and see things from their points of view. Even though you were like telling yourself, but I'm not going to sympathize with this person, you end up really doing that. Like, the author ends up endearing the characters to you, and it's like, this is why they had to be evil. I'm not saying their choices are right and what they did was right. It was wrong, and it ended up biting them in the ass. But at the same time, you do see how they think, and that's amazing writing, I guess Anna Siyaku Mama Segi, Iya Segi, actually, Mama Segi, the firstborn child. She was born to a mother who was like exactly like her in terms of description. She was like tall, dark skinned. There was a lump of flesh around her neck. When the people used to like sing around her about you ugly type of vibe. And she was like, I'm unbothered, guys, because I am a self-made woman. She had her own company, so she had money. She's like, I don't need a man. So yeah, she was like living like that. And then Naye Mama Segi was living like her mother, but we all in the business. She used to save so much money that she had like a drum next to her bucket. I actually don't know what the structure is called. And every single night she used to like count her money. Then there's this one day in the market, she came across this woman, and the way she describes her is so poetic, but it's like basically lust, So she sees this woman and she sees how she's sashaying around the men. Like, she's dancing around them, being flirtatious with them, and she's watching the movement of her hips and the way the cloth is clinging to her hips, and she is salivated with lust. And I did not expect at all, but this mother is going to be like LGBTQ, like at all. But I was like, I see it though. I see it. Like, this woman has given provider energy across all the chapters, that when you was like, oh, mask. Okay, mask. So she's like lusting over this girl, and she's doing her nightly routine of counting her money, and she's thinking of this girl strips naked, like flicks the bean. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on YouTube. Flicks the bean, thinking about this lady, and falls asleep, because big O, yay. The mother comes in the room, seeing her daughter naked and like with money all over her. It's like, oh my gosh, greed. is gonna be the death of you. Oh my gosh, how dare you lust over money to this extent, yeah? And the girl is like, no, you don't understand. Oh, but anyway, the mother's like, that's it. You need a husband, okay? You cannot worship money like this. Kesana, the mother talks to her best friend and is like, my daughter needs a man. My daughter needs a husband. And then the friend is like, I know just the guy, say less, yeah? And the guy happens to be her son, Baba Segi. Now, at this point in his life, Baba Segi is an apprentice. He's minding his business, guys. He's like, hustling in the city and doing his best to live, yeah? Goku, the mother, is like, hey, bruh, you need to marry someone. And here's a lump of cash. She's like, oh, okay, cool. And she goes to the town, chat na lo girlie, and then go back to the city. And it's like, oh, okay. He was just following orders, yeah? And actually, he's a very dutiful son, because someone would have asked, like, Onje? Hi, well, mama, could you not choose someone better? Onje, for real? But anyway, there's a good guy, married her, and then it's like, yep, hitting the sack. I'm gonna have kids. I'm gonna, have this huge house. Yeah. So, but banangolo hlobo ke sana. Nasi story sa bono rebelling. So, in this story, then taking it to present day, where it's like Bolanle with the conceiving issues, these are the stories of the 4 wives. And when you think about where they come from in terms of trauma, that everyone has survived trauma, maybe except for the 3rd wife, because she's just a damn girly ahead story. But the first 2 being forced into this world, but actually the 3rd wife also was forced into this world, and Bolanle choosing to be in this world because of a traumatic event. You can see how they saw this guy as a place of refugee, a place of escape, and a place where they can be protected in. Cool. I guess present day, we're talking about Bolanle's conception issues and fertility issues. The doctor has an appointment with her, and Baba Segi is in the room. So the doctor is asking like some uncomfortable questions. What Baba Segi saw as his 4th wife was like this innocent virgin who married me. Kanti, now through the consultation with the doctor, hey, when did you get sexually active? And then she asks herself, I wonder if this means consensually or like when my virginity was taken. And then she says a number when she was in the teenagers. And then Baba Segi shocked. It's like, oh my gosh, what? Because thank you. The doctor asked, have you ever had any miscarriage or abortion? No. And Bolanle was honest, like, yeah, I've had an abortion before. Yo, Baba Segi, stressed, leaves the room and goes to do a number 2. Something else you need to know about this guy. Anytime he's stressed, like if he hears bad news, on the spot, he will go do number 2. Like if an employee says, yo, Baba, the store has been broken into, inventory has been stolen, first port of call is going to be the bathroom. It's actually very disgusting because we see that in this scene, he did not wipe properly in the bathroom. And now they're back in the car and it smells terrible. So yeah, anyway, so then Bolanle is honest with the doctor about, oh yeah, I've conceived before, I had an abortion, sure. Then Baba Segi is stressed, they go back to their car, cool. Another character that I need to tell you about, and like the vibes of this world, is how patriarchal it is and how women are deemed less than. So there is the driver of the car who wants to humble Bolanle, even though she's educated and she's a woman, she's pretty, whatever. Like, who do you think you are? So even when they're going to hospital, he found a way. Like, every time he changes the gear, his arm is going to rub on her boobs. And it's like, he's doing that on purpose. It's so weird. But anyway. So now, the doctor analyzes Bolanle, and it's like, bro, even though you had an abortion, whatever, you're still fertile. There's nothing that we can see that's wrong from your side. Let us analyze. Sure. And then Baba Segi has to give the sample of his semen. And it is a very disgusting scene because this guy has never pleasured himself before. So he's like, how am I supposed to get hard without a woman around? And then it's like, girl, there's a magazine over there. Just look at the magazine. And it's like, I'm supposed to touch myself? The hell? This is an abomination. I can't believe men do this. No. This is basically unholy. But he's looking at the pictures and he can feel himself, the dough is rising, basically. And he's now doing this. He's like, oh my gosh, this is disgusting. And then he shoots. I think there's like parts of the, that end up on the wall. And it's like, oh my gosh, bro, could you not aim? That's disgusting. But anyway, enough lands up in the cup that it's able to be analyzed. The doctors are analyzing this, and then they're like, wait a minute. Not only are they, I call slow swimmers, I call dead swimmers, there are no swimmers at all. And the guy is like, that's virtually impossible. How can we have a sample that has no sperm at all? Like Njani, he's like, poor guy must have had measles as a kid. And then we get his backstory. He died. The mother was very concerned about him. The people who killed his father, they're gonna go after his son, trying to protect his son. And then this one day he fell ill and he could not move. He was just lying on the floor, and he was sensitive to light, bruh. He couldn't even go outside. So that was when he had measles, but they don't know that. But see best like someone is trying to kill him. Turns out those were measles. And that's when he lost his ability to, shoot shots, So anyway, this was a plot twist that we had seen back on page 19. That was like, oh, okay, this guy has no shooters for sure. But the way it's revealed, bro, the journey to get there, even though it's a plot twist you already suspected and knew, it's still a satisfying plot twist. Like, oh, flip, ne, shame, man. Damn. And now, okay, fine, I'll get to this later on. So anyway, they found out that it doesn't need shooters, ne? But they're like, Njani got to have 7 kids. Because everyone suspected that it's Bolanle, because this guy has 7 kids. You're the problem, yeah, bo? And it's like, no, she's actually not the problem. Then what's going on? Agana shooters? Let's talk to the first wife, yeah, bo? Mama Segi went there, not even hesitating. She knew this day would come. She was like, you know what? It is what it is. Fine, guys. Baba, yeah. My kids are not your kids. Yeah. And then she left the hospital running, you know? So now the driver is looking at her run frantically, and he's concerned like, oh my gosh, is everything okay? And then she's like, I told him that his kids are not his kids. And the driver is now concerned like, oh my gosh, because what's the plot twist? He happens to be the father of Mama Segi's. He actually is the father of Segi, the firstborn daughter, and the second child. So the first wife here decided, but I'm not going to take it far from home. I'm just going to bang the driver to get the kids. Cool. And then he's concerned because, flip, if the boss finds out, I am going to be beaten, fired, whatever, let me get ahead of it and quit. Cool. Hi, Kesana. Baba Segi comes in the car. He's shocked. He is like in disbelief, and the guy is stressed, and he's like, you know what, I need to quit. This is gonna be my last day. Fine. Then all the dominoes fall, but all the wives don't have him as the father of the kids, and so this is how it goes. Mama Segi, when she was bought the traditional medicine, what? You don't have shooters. Your engine has no gas. Basically, I need to get my car service somewhere else because you're not going to get the job done. And she went to the driver, ne? Thank you. When the second wife came in the home, Mama Segi was like, girl, this guy, make a way. And she was like, bet. She was already having an affair with the firstborn son of that house, and she was in love with him. So she was like, hey, let's do this again. And then she managed to get 3 kids out of that. Sure. Thank you. Mama Femi came also in the picture, and they're like, bro, he got no swimmers. Make a plan. Damn girly that she is. She's like, okay, fine, I'll think about it, whatever. And then there was this one day she was buying meat at the butcher, and she didn't have money, and she's like, you know what? There's payment plans. And then the butcher is like, you know what? Say let's do this. And then this was the first time she's been like, she had never experienced pleasure from that act before. Ne? So the baby girl is getting the big O's, and she is obsessed to the point where she's daydreaming about that D, and the kids are crying in the background. She cannot hear the kids until Mama Segi came in the room and was like, bro, you're obsessed with this guy? You need to stop. You can't even handle it. Stop. Ne? You need to stop seeing him. And the damn girlie that she is, she just stopped for real. And I was like, man, if you're getting good D for the first time in your life, and your husband is even doing this, and he's just gonna stop, you're not gonna sneak out. But she just followed it. She's basically a child, I think, mentally. Cool. So now the 10 tables are turning for real. Sorry, Michael Scott.
Well. how the turntables.
So now the dominoes are falling, but you need to understand, in the background of the three wives trying to get rid of Bolanle, they've been doing things like poisoning her, accusing her of things like they accused her of witchcraft, like there's a rat and then some things, but it came from her stuff. Bolanle is looking at this thing confused, like what the hell? And Baba Segi was like, guys, let's calm down. I don't know how this ended up here, but let's be calm. So they've been plotting to get rid of this girl, yeah. And in this poison plot that they had, it turns out that the food that was supposed to be eaten by Bolanle was eaten by the firstborn daughter, Segi, and that like ended up backfiring completely. It was terrible. So in the height of discovering that none of his kids are his kids, there's also this thing about your child has ingested poison and she's basically sick and on the brink of death. That's it. And oh my gosh, the climax, and like now Segi finally dying, bro. You ask yourself, I wonder if they regret doing this and if they think to themselves that we should have just let her stay, because in the hopes of getting rid of her, accusing her of witchcraft, trying to poison her, they now like, okay, fine, into azayenza a divorce. Bolanle, Baba Segi, is the fact that she's not going to be able to provide kids. But now the fact that she could not conceive led to them going the western route and like, actually you don't have any swimmers at all, and finding out about none of his kids are like, guys, we know you hate this woman, but if you had actually just told her to have an affair like you did for the other wives, you would be safe right now. So anyway, Baba Segi finds out about none of his kids are his, and then he's like, you know what, you guys, bye, everyone out. And then the wives beg to stay, his wives, and he accepts, he forgives, and he's like, okay, fine, these are my kids, basically. So something else I just need to touch on, because I don't think I did it properly. Iya Femi, the second wife, is very competitive. The first description of Bolanle seeing the three wives, let me just say, the first wife was like, oh, she's tall, she's dark skinned, she is fat, she is ugly. Basically, that's what she described. That's what she saw as the first wife. Second wife was like, bro, what the hell? The two colors? Basically, the second wife was bleaching her skin so that she can be beautiful. Basically, I want yellow bone vibes. And in terms of being competitive, she's competitive to the point that when she makes food, when she cooks, she makes the best food, and that's in lieu of the guy coming to spend nights with her. So out of the 7 days, the first wife gets 2 days, the third wife gets 2 days, and she gets 3 days. She likes that system, but she gets more nights because it means she's the favorite wife, And now that Bolanle is in the picture, that is being thrown off balance, and she's no longer the favorite wife, which bothered her a lot. What else? Baba Segi and his diarrhea problem when he's stressed, cool. So now he's finding out about none of the kids are his, and then the wives are begging to stay with him, sure, and he forgives them. My initial impression of Baba Segi was like of disgust, because I can visualize how ugly he might be, and the fact that he is not a man in any sense. Remember when I said Mama Segi said you need to find a husband, and then took all his savings and then gave them to the friend gave them to her son. So I'm like, bro, nothing that you have belongs to you. Nothing that you have is through your efforts, From the kids that you have to the business that you have, your startup capital came from the woman. You are not a man in any sense of the word, in terms of virality and in terms of being a provider. Under patriarchal definitions of what a man is, you have failed. You are not that, And in the book, we find out that Baba Segi is providing the house, the food, and everything. But actually, the real man of the house, the real provider, is Mama Segi, because she also has her own side hustle, and she gives the wives extra money when they need top-ups, like I need to buy school uniform for the kid, I need to buy this, like she's the one who's providing the extra income. So that's why the wives are very scared of her, and they basically are subservient to her. She's like the dominatrix, basically, of the house, So when you find out that the kids are not his, the money to set up the business are not his, it's like, and then what value have you provided for this house, So I took that very negative view of Baba Segi, and I was like, he not a man. And then I have this one friend who had the first and only kind thing to say about Baba Segi was that it's actually like he's not a bad person. It's not his fault that everyone else was forced on him. He didn't force these wives to marry him. People begged these girls to marry him, remember? Like begged him to marry the girls both. And he was doing a good thing. And he's actually a provider, this escape for them, and he's not an abusive man in any way. His only critique is the fact that he has sex so violently, so aggressively, and it's actually a terrible thing. That he made Bolanle have flashbacks of a sexual assault. Yeah, well, that's his only crime. And you know the dumb thing is, like, he was doing all that rabbit and there was nothing. You're doing it. And like, he even had this part in the book where he's like, yeah, nah, I made sure that Ingati her back was connected to the springs of the bed or something. Like, that's how far he was pushing in. And it's like, yo, you were just pushing water in there. All that effort for nothing. You were just pumping water in there. Like, what a waste. Oh my gosh. So anyway, I had a very negative view of him. But my friend Bosisi was like, girl, actually, he's not a bad guy. So yeah, actually she has a point, and that's a good point. Cool. Themes that I found in this book, it's I asked my friends when we did the book club review thing, it's like, would you say this is a feminist novel? And they said yes. And also, like, when they analyze the patriarchy in the system that the book finds itself in, there's things like domestic violence being normalized in the society, because there's this one scene where the author, this is actually on page 28, where the author says that there was a Senate who slapped his female colleague in parliament or something, and then it was like, and every man, there was no uproar or kanye critique of what the senator did, the male senator did, but it was just like, oh, okay, cool. And the driver was like, oh my gosh, we can hit women now, beat his woman, and there's no person arresting you, there's no critique about, oh my gosh, we shouldn't do that. Is it frowned upon? Not. So this is like the patriarchal world that the woman exists in, that this novel paints us in, yeah, that even in the highest court of the land, like in parliament, senators can do this and get away with it, yeah. And yeah, I found that very interesting, that this is the world we live in. Another thing that I picked up on that I questioned was if the relationship with Yabana, the second wife, she had relations with the firstborn son of that house. I wondered if that relationship was consensual, and also Bolanle had a relationship with the landlord's son. So in these relationships, you find that there's a power dynamic, and I'm asking myself, then are those sexual relations consensual? Because second wife, when she was in that house as a servant, basically as a slave, how could she have said no to the son of the master of the house, basically, yeah? And that woman made her life a living hell. And even though she said, you below my son, you're too bottom for them, you're beneath them, she wouldn't have said, oh, I can, yeah, you shouldn't sleep with the servant or the house help. No, but basically, like, if he wants to sleep with you, let him sleep with you, yeah? So I'm asking if there's consent in those relationships. And in terms of talking about the patriarchal structure, something my friend said, Vico, was that we should analyze where we fall in the patriarchal structure, because women can have more privileges than men in patriarchy. For example, if you are a person who finds herself in Joburg suburbs, you're educated, you have a job, and you have this life of privilege, of access, and your needs are met, and you have like these blessings of, like, you have your own car, you have more privilege in the system than a man who exists in a village, who does not have any education, or can you pelele go secondary school in terms of getting education, and doesn't have wealth like you, yeah. So there are things that we found and we analyzed, but you need to find and see where you are in the patriarchal structure, because this is definitely a feminist novel, or maybe even if it isn't, but it is definitely a critique and like a mirror up to the patriarchal society that these characters find themselves in. So I found it very interesting. Yeah, so in terms of the themes, that consent thing came up a lot for me, and into your poverty, guys, geez, and how these women had to marry to be able to survive, for sure. So consent, into your poverty in this book, the patriarchy that exists here. Even though Bolanle is educated and having, she has this thing of like being humbled by these men around her, the driver especially, because he is like an insecure prick. But yeah, it's a very nice novel. I would recommend it. And even if you got to the end of this video and I spoiled everything, I would still recommend that you read this book for yourself. It is absolutely delicious. There's things that I didn't touch on, for example, like Mamaka Bolanle had a stroke, yeah, but things like that, like how that family dynamic gets resolved. I have not touched on those. And as much as you do have doubt the biggest plot twist by this guy is infertile, please give this book a read. It is a very fascinating, it's delicious, and it would be great for you to read this book because there's a Netflix series coming out, and like compare how you imagine the characters and the story versus how it's gonna come out, yeah. So I find that very fascinating. Thank you so much for joining me for this book review. Please read the book, and if you did read the book, tell me what you thought. Leave the comments down below. Please like and subscribe, and I'll join you. Please join me for the next video in March. Thanks guys, hope you had a great Valentine's. Oh my gosh, something that I want to mention really fast is how I enjoyed that the plot twist was revealed and the climax happened, and then we still got to see the aftermath of how the characters dealt with the big revelation, yeah? So in a lot of books, when the climax is there, they kind of just leave it there, and the reader is left with the duty of concluding it in their minds of like, I wonder how the characters dealt with that. I wonder how this was resolved at the end. And this one, it is satisfying, so satisfying, because we get to see Baba Segi deal with the aftermath and the feelings, and like you know exactly how this ends. This is why I actually hate short stories, because you leave me hanging in the loose. For example, this book, this book came highly recommended by friends of mine, like, oh my gosh, Shilika, because I'm like, I read this book. So example, my favorite stories here include the first one, which is Cock Up, and this is a wife who slept with the boss because of money, and the husband actually encouraged her, so because they were broke, both like, okay, sleep with the guy. Actually not a boss, someone who was like buying something from her. She was a hawker, so he was buying something from the street and like, I want to have sex with you, and the husband was like, he's offering you this amount of money, sleep with him. He was jobless, and that story, I'm like, okay fine, then how did it end? It's a short story and it ends good climax. Another one was the anointed wife. The wife found out that the husband that she married, who is a pastor, he's being accused of cheating, and this girl is like, this guy slept with me. And then this wife is like, no, my husband never do that, no. And then we find out that the girl who's accusing the husband of doing this actually did sleep with the guy, and then what? We don't get to find out, because that's when the story ends. Like, I hate short stories because we don't get the conclusion. So this one, nah, would not recommend. This one, no. I don't know, actually. There's a really nice one story here that I actually have like sentimental value for, but by and large, no. And then this one, no. And yeah, what I haven't even finished them, because I just get so frustrated that I am not going to be satisfied at the end of this read. So this one, Isheke Apanaye. These are like random bookmarks that I have. And yeah, I don't think I finished this one as well. I just got frustrated. I hate short stories. Like, I really hate. But you know who I don't hate? She will always be the girl. I'm sorry. These short stories, as much as they're short stories and there's a climax and it's like, they are so satisfying. Oh my gosh. And my favorite story is the last one here, which I have to like actually make a video for. Let me see. The Hairstrong Historian. My favorite. But anyway, yeah, so this book, please guys, read this. 10 out of 10. That's what I'm saying. 10 out of 10. Read this book. Yeah, and watch the Netflix show when it comes out. But yeah, bye.